if I can share my screen.
Yes. You can share.
Oh, hang on, I have to find the right thing to share first.
It's a button.
No, I know that. I've just got to get the right thing on my screen first.
I see. If you want, I can do it for you.
No. I might have even changed it since the last time I sent it to you, so I'll get it.
Okay.
Open.
So, as the translator don't have your right PowerPoint, your brand new PowerPoint, you should speak very, very slow. Yeah. In order they can translate you to Portuguese and to Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you go faster, I will stop you. You forgive me, but I have to do that.
No, please do. Please do. Okay. Let me just try it. I won't keep it like this, but okay. There. That does that work so you can see it okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll do that when I'm ready to do it then.
Vamos começar?
Oh, it looks like I might be able to record as well.
Well, we are recording, and I hope it will work out as I told you. But you can record as well.
It looks like it. Amazing.
Okay, let's begin.
We're ready.
Ready? Okay, Gillian.
Are we?
Hello. I'm going to speak in English in order the translator can translate in a proper way, okay? And you can follow me. Now I present another friend from Bradford, England, Dr. Gillian Proctor. She will present her speech now, and she is a clinical psychologist of the North Bradford Person-Centered Therapy Mental Health Team and an honorary researcher at the University of Bradford Center for Citizenship and Community Mental Health. Ethics, politics, and power are her special interests, and publications include author of The Dynamics of Power in Counseling and Psychotherapy, and co-editor of Encountering Feminism and Politicizing Person-Centered Approach, an Agenda for Social Change. She is currently exploring the dynamics of power in a new relationship with her dog. So, Gillian, the audience is yours.
Mine now. Okay. Thank you very much, Marcia. I have to slightly update my biography because I'm now a lecturer at the University of Leeds.
Oh.
And when I wrote that in my book on power, I just got a puppy. This was a long time ago, but I'm literally just about to get another new puppy. So it just really does work still. So
okay, I'm sorry I took that biography.
Yeah, no, it's actually just current again.
Okay.
Do I do this share screen? Before I start sharing my screen, I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation to keep me focused and online of what I want to say, to try and help the translators. Please tell me to slow down. I may well go too fast. That frequently happens. But before I start sharing my screen, I really want to give a very big thank you for Krista Sussman, who's really helped with this presentation, because she's done the cartoons that are a huge part of it. And she also really helped with the animations to make it work better. And so it's made it infinitely more entertaining and beautiful. So Krista's here today. Please say hello, Krista, and thank you so much.
No, eu botei ela na sala de espera.
Oh, she's in the waiting room.
Well, I put her in the waiting room by the way, but I brought her again. Where is she?
She's gone now.
No, she's not gone. She came back. Kristen?
Krista, are you there?
Tá aí? Onde? Hold on a second. Let me find her. So many people.
Gone.
Márcia, você tá no mudo.
Oh, she's gone. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to carry on. I'm sure she'll be back at some point. Here we go. I'm hoping this screen share will start working. You can see my screen, everybody? Hide floating meeting controls. Okay. So what I want to talk about today is existential issues, particularly in the context of COVID. I've always been a fan of existential issues, but at the moment in the current context, it seems even more relevant than it usually does to me. So I want to explain why. There we go. So one of the big existential issues that philosophers focus on is facing or avoiding our own death. This is what I'm going to go through today. I'm going to talk about the concept of existential angst, if we don't face our own death and limited life. I'm going to specifically talk about Nietzsche's idea of the tragic man, and he uses the Greek mythological figures of Apollo and Dionysus to illustrate this. I'm then going to suggest that during COVID, we've moved from an acute to a chronic anxiety response to the situation, and think a bit more about what that might mean for us. I'm going to talk a bit about new habits and identities that we can have, that we may have during COVID. For myself, I will mention my increased emotional awareness in this time. And I'll be interested to know if this has any resonance with other people. I'm also going to talk about my increased awareness of my lack of control and of the constraints on my power in life. And finally, I'm going to talk about existential aloneness. When we get to number 9, we'll have a bit more hope and positivity, because I'm going to talk about encounter as a response to existential aloneness. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in the next half an hour. So existential philosophy arose with the decline in religion, certainly in the Western Hemisphere, and the necessity to focus on our lives now in the absence of being able to believe in a better life after death. Sartre is one of the big figures who talks about the idea about whether we face or avoid the fact of death. And he suggests that to ignore the fact that we're going to die is really living in bad faith. And many of us spend a lot of our lives doing this, almost as though death happens to everybody else, but not us. Even if it happens to me, surely it's a lot later. Surely I have to be really old before I die. But the figure of death ever looms over us, lurking. What Sartre and other existentialists would suggest is that even if we try to avoid the idea of death, it comes through. We can't completely avoid it. And either at those times, or if we try and face that idea in good faith, what arises from this is existential angst. Angst should have had a capital A there, I've just realised. Angst can often arrive in the middle of the night. Spectral figures of death when we least want to think about it. Not usually a pleasant experience. Angst can both be a result of thinking about death or noticing our own and close to others as people's death, but it can also arise from us realizing that our lives are limited.
Gillian, slow down, please.
Thank you. Angst also comes from our realization that our lives are limited, and we only us can make choices about how we live our lives with so little information and ability to predict how those choices will play out. Another existential preoccupation is how we make sense of the meaning of life, how we decide to make meaning out of our own individual lives. And this can only be an individual answer. But existential philosophers would suggest that is part of being human, trying to make that meaning. Another relevant concept is that of existential aloneness. The idea being that we all are born alone from another, certainly, but all in our unique experiences inside ourselves. And we die alone, and nobody else can really share the whole of our internal experience, however empathic people can be. Simone de Beauvoir talks about the tragic ambivalence that we live with being human. The ambivalence between being autonomous, sovereign, unique beings, but at the same time being totally dependent on others who are really unpredictable. So that can cause a lot of anxiety. I would argue that the situation that we're living now in terms of COVID is an existential crisis that we're all facing together. During COVID, matters of life and death are clearly at the forefront. Whether we're worried about our own potential death or those of others close to us, or even if it doesn't seem to be close to us personally, we're much closer to the people around us who we might live with, especially when we've got to keep distant from other people. It can make us really question what meanings we have in our own life. Are we with the people we want to be close to? Are we doing the work that we want to be doing? This facing potential death, especially when we haven't got leaders that we can turn to and trust to give us any answers, can be very anxiety provoking, and I think provokes existential angst. Certainly during lockdown, it gave us much more opportunities for reflection and thinking about our own values when our familiar routines disappeared. It allowed me certainly much more opportunity to be in the present, more in my own emotions and aware of those. It took me away from my usual position of making plans, which I'm very good at. But during the COVID time, it's been impossible to make plans really, and I have to be much more now and here. For me, existential crises are times when I feel most alive, most engaged with myself and the world. And I think maybe because I'm so much more in the present than I often have been. And it's interesting for me at this point that most of my existential crises previously have been individual, maybe about passing a certain age or losing a loved one. But this time, there's something different about being joined by the whole world in facing such a crisis and the possibility of working through this with other people. However, I don't want to underestimate how hard it is to be in this existential angst and to face all our anxiety and angst at the moment, as this image shows. Maybe it's not such the deep experience that we were hoping it would be when we can be present and really with ourselves. There's monsters lurking too. The next concept I want to talk about is of the tragic man from Nietzsche, who's another existential philosopher. And what I want to talk about here are what are the possible responses we can have if we try and live in good faith, acknowledging that our limited lives and the constraints we have and our own and others' deaths that are inevitably the end of these lives. Nietzsche discussed the characters and responses of the Greek gods, Apollo and Dionysus. And Stephen Mitchell, a psychoanalytic writer, uses Nietzsche's ideas to, I think, give us a really nice illustration that's relevant to COVID for me. So I want you to go with my picture here and imagine what I'm saying. We're on a sandy beach. It's a beautiful sandy beach. The best perfect beach to make sandcastles. Just the right sand, perfect composition. We have two figures, Apollo and Dionysus. First of all, Apollo, busy, non-stop, making the biggest and best sandcastles he possibly can. Flags, everything, turrets, huge sandcastles. Completely unaware of the incoming tide. Dionysus, on the other hand, is really aware of the incoming tide. He thinks, what's the point? Absolute waste of time. Look at Apollo, wasting all his energy. I'm not going to bother. I'll just lie here. For Nietzsche, the tragic man is the fullest way to live. And he sees this as balancing the Apollonian and Dionysian dimensions. The tragic man pursues his life projects without the illusion of immortality. He's creative, but not devastated in the light of his creative project's dissolution. Stephen Mitchell explains it, saying, the inevitable limitations of reality do not dim the passion with which he builds his castles. In fact, the inexorable, inevitable realities add a poignancy and sweetness to his passion. So it's something about if we can really live knowing that death is at the end, that life can have more meaning or more something, more passion, more aliveness. I don't know if this will relate to people, but I found myself being both Apollo and Dionysus in relation to COVID.
Gillian, could you slow down a little bit, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had Apollo moments in COVID, rushing to do everything online the best I could, as quickly as possible, I had Dionysian moments of thinking, what's the point? I'll just give up. I'm aiming for the tragic woman approach of trying to balance the two.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Apollo and Dionysus. I want to talk about the notion of anxiety and trauma in COVID. I think we've moved now from the acute novel phase to something much more chronic that isn't just a new normal, but an ongoing, stressful, anxiety-provoking situation. Actual or threatened death is with us constantly, even if we deny it, that it could relate to us, or we don't experience it as close to us. In acute stress, we respond with a fight, a flight, or a freeze or flop response. But now I think it's different when we're in chronic stress. I don't want to define this as a traumatic situation for everybody, but it certainly could be for some. For example, women locked in with violent partners, or people in such poverty that they're struggling to survive. And I think here Judith Herman's descriptions of the impact of chronically traumatic situations could really help us understand something. She talks about two possible responses to chronic trauma. And I certainly relate to these responses in this COVID situation for myself. One of those is hypervigilance. I find myself during COVID constantly monitoring the closeness of potentially dangerous others at times. Constantly monitoring my own symptoms. Is that a little cough? Could it be a proper cough? Can I still smell something? Have I got a temperature or am I just hot?
Yeah.
That's my hypervigilant response, I think. And then at other times, I relate to the dissociation response that Herman talks about in trauma. Completely forgetting what's going on. I may find myself walking past somebody, forgetting to keep away, not having my mask with me, planning something that I'd like to do before I even remember that I'm not allowed to do these things anymore. So I really feel like I quite often fluctuate between these responses, these trauma responses. I'd also like to suggest that in these new COVID times, we may have developed some new habits, some new routines. We may have almost become new people, developed new identities. I'm surprised how little I miss socializing. And I always used to think I was a sociable person. So I'm really changing how I see myself now. Merleau-Ponty reminds us of our embodiment and how we become people, how we are people through how we act through our body. He says, the world is not what I think, but what I live through. We're bodies placed in the world, and we become our subjectivity through how we inhabit the world. Now, this is a strange one during COVID times, especially when a lot of our experiencing is online, which is inherently disembodied. We become 2Ds, our body becomes frozen in front of the screen. I certainly find it takes much more conscious effort to notice my bodily needs and keep myself embodied in the present, like eating, drinking, moving, sexuality. Oh, there we go. I found certainly during the first lockdown time, there were many less opportunities for me to be distracted from my inner emotions, both because I couldn't plan what I was doing next, and I wasn't spending much time with other people to focus on. So I really was just with my own inner experiencing much more. As a result, I experienced my emotional experiencing as much less clouded. Like the clouds were being blown away by this coronavirus. All my plans, all my noticing other people, and I was much more with myself. I experienced a new level of riding waves of emotion that felt more intense quite often than I was used to experiencing. I was much more able to focus on being rather than doing, which has been a lifetime aim, but I've often been really rubbish at. With no possibility of future plans, which was really my big thing, to make future plans, I had no option but to be in the present and with myself. This new awareness and focus on my emotional experiencing has felt like a great opportunity for me. And I really want to be able to hold on to it, but I'm not sure how well I will. Another issue during this COVID time for me has been my awareness of
Gillian, just a moment. Lucas, the interpreter, is asking for a slowdown.
Okay. Do I need to go back?
No.
No, okay.
But just after each sentence, if you make a little break,
Sure.
it will help.
Yeah, of course. The issue of power or agency and our control. Foucault's early work focused on docile bodies. This was Foucault's term, docile bodies. That we have no agency in this concept. We're part of the power games of the powerful. We're people who are done to. Later on, in his later work, he focused much more on individual agency and how we each use power to create our own identities and stylize ourselves. In this way, he saw power as a positive, productive thing. My question is, how much do we each feel our own personal power in this situation? Do we feel like those in power are playing out things that we're just part of we're just a bit part? Or do we feel like we can shape how things are going for ourselves? That would have helped if I'd have put that up before. That's kind of what I was saying. During COVID, I think the constraints we have on ourselves in terms of our own power have been really clear. Both the needs of others, particularly if we have children or people we're caring for, the rules of contact and lockdown that we're constrained by, and certainly our own limited time and lifespan. During COVID, my experience of my limits have been much clearer than before. And I've wondered, how much can we surrender to our lack of control and live in the not knowing, not being able to predict? Or do we still find ways to create illusions or delusions of control? I want to make an important point here that I'm kind of talking about COVID as though it's a universal experience. And I think in one way it is, it's affecting us all. But I think we're really not all in it together. There are so many different positions in this, all the inequalities that were there already that had been exacerbated hugely. In addition, the divisions amongst those of us who could safely work from home, of which I was one, those who lost work, and those who had to continue to work, even though they were at risk to themselves, to be able to exist. Certainly in the UK, the statistics for COVID in terms of cases and deaths for people from minority ethnic groups are far higher. So the inequalities within the world just seem to have shot up at this point. My final concept to talk about is existential aloneness. Now, this is the existential concept that means we're all fundamentally alone by being part of being human. We're kind of locked in our own skin and our own unique experiences of humanness. This experience for me was acute and obvious during lockdown, and pretty poignant, really. Even the coronavirus felt alone in the worst of the lockdown. When we were completely locked down, I'd go outside sometimes for my daily exercise and feel like I was in a ghost town. I wouldn't see people. I'd see houses and imagine there might be people living in those houses. But sometimes it was hard to believe. It almost felt like I could be the last person on the planet. Even online sometimes, I'd look at people on the screen and think, are you real? Are you really a person? Could you be a robot? Would I know? There was often a kind of huge relief when I saw something spontaneous, like a child appearing behind somebody on the door or a cat going across the desk, which seemed to be the signs that made me think, oh, they must be human, really. And maybe they're going through something similar to me out there. And there was a huge relief in that. And I found that working online, that necessity of trying to show something about my humanness is really, really important. However it's done. It's hard to kind of schedule those spontaneous interruptions, though. So what I want to finish with is the idea of encounter as a response to existential aloneness. This is where person-centered philosophy becomes particularly relevant. We're all in this humanity thing together, even though we're all very different human beings. Encounter philosophy offers a dialogical, intersubjective response to our fundamental existential aloneness. I think this is very similar to Carol's conclusion, so I'm glad to build on that. Peter Schmidt emphasizes our responsibility to the call of the other, following Levinasian philosophy in a social context. Levinas talks about how the other calls to us, and the only ethical response is to be open to the otherness of the other and to be present, to encounter the other. The idea is that in encounter, we can experience ourselves and others in all our uniquenesses and in the universality of our humanity. In conclusion, I think the situation we're in at the moment is an extreme version of life, in that we're in a not knowing, not being able to control or predict. And this is anxiety provoking. But it also could bring us a freedom from trying to control uncontrollable things. As Rogers, I had to put him on the last slide, said, the only certainty is that we are uncertain. For me, I want to try and use this time to be clearer about what matters to me in my time-limited life. This is the only one I've got that I know of. It's not a rehearsal. And I want to make sure that I live my life according to my values as much as I can. Can it be an opportunity to be creative, to learn what we can control, which really is just our own responses, and what we can't control, pretty much everything else, and free ourselves from feeble attempts to delude ourselves that we have more control than we do. If we can tolerate our anxiety or angst with self-compassion and free ourselves to be open and be creative, maybe we can be open to encountering others and connect beyond our separate existences. I think it's all we have. And finally, once we're gone, it probably won't matter anyway. I'll leave you to take what you like from the last cartoon. I have a reference slide that I won't put up, but if anybody wants these sending round later. Shall I stop sharing? Then I can see people.
Okay.
Stop share, I'll try. Where is it? There we go. Pause share. No, stop share. That's it.
Yeah.
The share is.
Before finishing here, I wanted to show Krista, because I throw her out of the room and then she came back and she's responsible for your cartoon. I want to show her for everybody. Hi, Krista.
Thank you, Krista.
Hello.
Thank you. Okay, Gillian, thank you very much. You know, it brought me anxiety, angst, just hearing you, you know, with the kind of death and life all together. Jesus Christ. So now we have some questions for you from the audience. I don't know whether we can make all the questions. There's a lot of things going on the chat, but I'm gonna ask you the question and then you'll give some little seconds for the translator to repeat the question in other languages and then you answer. Is that okay for you?
Sure.
Okay. One is from Bianca Souza from the Northeastern, Maranhão. She asks you, do you agree that COVID-19 invite us to think, to be, and to live like good faith of Sartre?
Good question.
Did you get the translator? I'm going to repeat for them. Do you agree that COVID-19 invite us to think, to be, and to live like good faith from Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre?
Okay, first of all, I think that existential philosophers would say we look for meaning in everything. So we'll all be trying to make sense individually of COVID-19 and what it means for us personally and what it means for the universal, the planet. Personally, I think it's made me think much more about living in good faith because death is so much closer. I don't know about anyone else.
There is another one. Where's the question? Oh, that's a big one, huge one. It's from Virginia Teles, also from the northeastern of Brazil, João Pessoa City. She asks, for some phenomenologists, being for death gives us the sense of ourselves. You brought the experience that we are living with COVID-19 and pointed to difference in exposure to the virus, which leaves some most vulnerable. In Brazil, we have lived through the genocide of the Black and indigenous population for centuries, as these people are more exposed to the risk of dying and being effectively murdered. It makes sense to think about death as a giver of meaning for those who are at daily risk of dying or being killed. Did you get it, Gillian? Or do you want me to repeat?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, the question is that in Brazil, for centuries, the Black people, the indigenous populations, they lived through genocide for centuries.
Yeah.
It makes sense to think about death as a giver of meaning for those who are at daily risk of dying or being killed.
Yeah. I agree that the inequalities mean that it can be a privilege to not have to think about death the whole time. And if we don't, we're kind of missing the point of life as well, I think.
Yeah. There is one more question. It's coming to my cell phone. There's the question. Well, that's difficult. That's difficult for me to read. Let's see. Where can people find the place to open to the other and the political space of our time that so ferociously tries to keep individuals divided? You want to repeat, Lucas? Okay, I'm going to repeat for the translator. Where can people find the place to open to the other in political space of our time that so ferociously tries to keep individuals divided? That's from Massimo Caon.
Again, a really good question. And I think all we can do is to know that's what's happening and to try and overcome it the best way we can. I wanted to ask Carol about how do we be open to the other when we're carrying so much fear, and that stops us because people trying to divide us makes us more fearful too. And then Carol answered it before I got a chance to say, if I can at least be aware of my own fear, then I can live with that and stay with it and then be open to more. I think it's really hard when there are so many forces trying to divide us. And I think it's the only hope we've got.
Yeah.
Do other people have answers? I don't have the answers to this thing.
I wish I had.
Ideas even?
Yeah. There is another one from Emmanuel from Northeast. Only Northeast people ask a question in Brazil. Jesus Christ, Vera from Rio. He is very grateful to you for your words. He says, I'm delighted. I wonder if you don't think that PCA emphasis on the development of the self and the fullness of that self often takes away from a discussion about the place of the self in the process of being a person. You quoted Schmidt and Levinas, and I think they put a lot more emphasis on the otherness and our inability to control than Rogers do. What do you think? Do you want me to repeat the translators? Okay, I'll repeat for the translators. Only the questions, okay? He likes a lot, Chile. I wonder if you don't think that PCA emphasis on the development of the self and the fullness of that self often takes away from a discussion about the place of the self in the process of being a person. You quoted Schmidt and Levinas, and I think they put a lot more emphasis on otherness and our inability to control life than Rogers do. What do you think?
I think Schmidt is important in pointing out that a person has both a substantial individual root and a relational root. And perhaps that wasn't emphasized so much by Rogers himself, but he talked about the organism more than the self. And I think everything he said was about relation. It's just how it's been interpreted in an individualist society to not mean that. It was always congruence in relationship. Everything was about relational.
Yeah.
And so I think both Schmidt and Rogers are right in that.
One more from one of the translators, Carol Werber from Argentina. Great, your presentation. Do you think humans in general are closer to Apollo than to Dionysus? How many pandemics will we need to wake up and to be more aware? You want me to repeat? Gillian?
Do I? No, I'm okay.
Lucas? Okay.
He's okay. I don't think Dionysus is any better than Apollo, to start with. I think probably most of us have Apollonian dimensions and Dionysian ones or moments. I certainly have them both. I don't think there's a particularly good way to live in good faith. But I think probably it's better or more congruent or more authentic to live in good faith than in bad faith, even though it's probably more painful and anxiety provoking too. And responding with producing things anyway, even when they disappear, I guess it's a human thing. I wouldn't want to get rid of my Apollonian or Dionysian aspects.
Now I'm taking Carol's Werber questions. How many pandemics will be needed for us to wake up? I like that question, Carol. So I'm repeating it to you.
I can't possibly attempt an answer. I've no idea. What will it take for us to wake up?
Yeah.
Maybe on the brink of our extinction, we might wake up.
Yeah, maybe not.
But I guess maybe, maybe not everybody will wake up at the same time.
Yes. I think now the last one, because of our time, is from Ana Paula from Mato Grosso in the center of Brazil. Personally, I can't think about the real possibilities of having good faith at a very high cost of death, loss, and mourning. How to do that?
I think it's how to live. I mean, death, loss, and mourning are part of life. I don't think there's any possibility to avoid that. Or if we do, the cost is avoiding life. I don't think we can pick and choose and say, I just want the good emotions. I just want the nice bits. I just want to be excited and in love and have all the good happiness stuff. It's a package.
Yeah, that's it. You facilitate us to be in contact with our anxiety and to ask so many difficult and huge and complex questions to you. That's what I think. And I thank you for that. I think you woke us up, woke me up, at least.
Thank you, Marcia.
So, Gillian, I thank you very much for accepting our invitation and for bringing your reflections with so clarity, so good examples. And the cartoonist is also very good. I told you she's an artist, Kristen. I thank you for that. And if you authorize us to pass your contact, your email, for people to get in touch with us, I can do it.
Yeah, sure.
Also, people are interested in getting your PowerPoint. And what I am telling everybody is that I needed the authorization of the presenters. So
you have it.
If you authorize the new one, because I have the old one, if you authorize, you send to me and I'll send an email to everybody with the contacts and with the tests, the papers, or the slides.
Yeah, if you could make it into a PDF, because it's a huge thing to
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I'd love to hear people's reflections, how much sense it made to people or anything that people resonate with.
Yeah. So you will receive, some feedbacks, I think, because
Right.
in the chat, there is a lot of feedbacks. I cannot read all of them. We are a lot of people, we're 260 people now. So many people make comments, then you will receive the comments. Okay.
Right.
Well, thank you very much in the name of the Brazilian community and the Projeto Conexão Formativa. And I'll ask for 5 minutes of break before we go to Maureen O'Hara presentation. 5 minutes. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Olá, Lucila. Olá, Maureen.
Hi there. Is Lucila here?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to show her for you. I'm going to show her for you.
All right.
Here she is.
Ah, there she is. Great.
Hello, Maureen, Marcia. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I'll just close my door.
Ok. Desmuta, Lucila.
Alô? Tá me ouvindo?
Aham.
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you and I can hear you.
Good. Tell me, tem alguma coisa falando para cancel the spotlight video? Do I have to do something here?
No.
Okay. I'm going to try to open this text together. Does it, I have both of you, the text and the screen. Does it work? It's okay?
Lucila, você abre o texto na sua tela e você continua aparecendo e você lê o texto. E o texto não aparece.
Ah,
Ok.
então tá bom.
O
Tá
texto
tudo
não aparece.
Tá
E
tudo certo.
porque eu vou colocar o PowerPoint.
Tá bom. Tá tudo certo, meu.
Ok, mas eu vou explicar primeiro. Eu dei um intervalinho de um pouquinho. Vou explicar primeiro, apresentar a Maureen. A Maureen vai falar um pouquinho e depois você entra. Tá certo?
Tá certo. Deixa eu te perguntar, tem algum lugar que você põe algum endereço e tal? Eu gostaria de pôr o meu blog, paginasdacasa.com.
Então, Natália, pode fazer isso? Botar no blog da Lucila Assunção. Ela vai colocar no chat.
Por favor.
Isso, www.paginasdacasa.com. É o blog. Eu estou ensaiando, porque é total novidade para mim.
Natália, bota aí blog da Lucila Assunção. Com P, mudo, Assunção. Obrigado, Natália.
Isso eu não estou vendo aqui. Eu não estou vendo o chat, mas não está bom. Não.
Embaixo não está vendo o chat?
Não. Deixa eu ver.
Fica ao lado do botão de compartilhar.
Ok.
Tá certo?
Achou?
Eu escrevi?
Achei, tá tudo certo.